Good evening. Let's get started. Town of Florence wants to welcome all of you to our tax session tonight. We have people from Casa Grande that came, so thank you for all coming. Historic district members, my historic district advisory commission members, thank you for all coming. We have a planner from Casa Grande, Laura here, who helps kind of supervise their historic district commission. Did anybody from your HDAC make it? I wouldn't recognize them. No? Okay. Anyways, staff thought about putting a class together, a session, if you will, that helps us understand how these tax incentives work, because as most of you know, being a historic district property owners, there's not many incentives out there anymore. Historic property, to rehab properties, it can be quite expensive and challenging. So we're trying to bring this to focus and help you guys understand that this incentive is out there. It's a federal tax and a state tax credit that, or I should say incentive that's out there that you can benefit from. So if you're lucky enough to own a historic property, we want you to understand the process, ask questions tonight. We're going to have some experts here with us that will be able to answer your questions. Eric Vondi from SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, is here. Bob Frankenberger as well. He's here from SHPO to answer any questions. I believe Eric is going to try to cover the non-producing residential properties, and Mr. Frankenberger is going to cover the federal tax on commercial properties. I wanted to put up in front of you this vision statement that comes from our guidelines. The town of Florence strives to have a historic district that will preserve the historic integrity of the town of Florence, provide a family-friendly, pedestrian-oriented environment, and improve the economic viability of the downtown. And being here for almost 11 years, I personally was pushed into the process of historic planning. Fell in love with it, and it's always been a passion of mine. I grew up in a historic, or actually in an adobe home, and I always had this connection with it. And I feel most of you do as well. I mean, most people don't do historic preservation because of the board. I mean, you really have to be into it, understand it, and love it. And I usually get customers that come into our office that will have a property that they say can't be saved, it's too far gone. And I show them this image right here. I love this picture. This is the Clark House. If this property can be saved, and it was, any property can be saved. I mean, it looks like it should have been torn down. It's so far gone, and they actually boarded up the windows to keep children out. They put a fence around it to keep people out, but there's a big gaping hole in the front. Here's some more images that show you how far gone this was. And through grants, they were able to save it, and now it looks like this. It's currently being used as the newspaper office. I mean, this is a wonderful example of what you can do with preserving properties. You would never imagine it was in this state, and it was for quite a while. The back, I mean, of the property that's right here is just the Clark home. I mean, it's pretty much gone. Well, so anyways, as I mentioned before, we have three experts that are going to be here tonight: Bob Frankenberger, Eric Vondi, and Laura with the Pinal County Assessor's Office. And they'll be able to answer questions. Now, could we get a raise of hand from people that have commercial properties that are here? Okay, and then the rest of you are residential non-producing properties? Yes? Okay. The way we're going to do this tonight is we're going to focus on non-income producing properties first, and then we'll get into the commercial portion of it. So I'm going to turn it over to one of our experts, Mr. Vondi, and I will have our planner bring you the mic so you can speak into it so we can hear you. And this is being recorded tonight for those that can. You want to? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Okay, let's see. How loud do how far does this have to be away? Can you hear me like this? Okay, good. I'm Eric Vondi from the State Historic Preservation Office. I have been running the state property tax program for non-income producing properties for nearly 11 years now. I didn't realize Gilbert and I had started our jobs about the same time, but apparently we did. the way the program works, it's fairly simple. There's a one-page application. About 60 or so copies are back there on the table for anybody who's not in. How many people are in it? Let's start with that first. A handful? Okay. So the way it works is if you're a contributing property to a historic district or listed on the National Register individually, and your property is non-income producing, meaning it's not a rental, meaning that in most cases owner occupied. It could be a nonprofit as well, though they don't really pay property taxes anymore, so there's not really a need for them to join. But if you are listed on the National Register and your property is non-income producing, you can get your property taxes lowered by around 50%. So right now, most people are in what the assessor would say is legal class 3, which is owner-occupied primary residence. Those taxes are based off of, your property taxes on that are based off of 10% of the assessed value of your home. When you join the tax program for historic properties, you become legal class 6, which is non-income producing historic, and your taxes are based off of 5% of the assessed value of your property, which amounts to nearly a 50% reduction. There's a few things that are covered by class 3 properties that aren't covered by class 6, so it often comes out being around 49% instead, but still it's a substantial savings. And you have to renew every 15 years by statute. And as I said, the application is actually less than 1 page long and will require 2 photos of your property. And in return for joining it, the idea behind it is that the money you save in property taxes, you'd be reinvesting into your house. Since older houses have more maintenance issues, the money you're saving in property taxes, you're supposed to reinvest. Of course, that's the ideal way to doing it. I have no idea if that really happens or not. The program was created about 30 years ago by a Republican in the legislature named Juanita Harrelson, who was from Tempe, who was worried about the flight to the suburbs and wanted to incentivize people to stay in the older areas of town, mainly Phoenix, but also the older areas of rural Arizona. And that's the property tax program was birthed from that. And currently around the state, there's about 7,000 people in it, a little over 7,000 now. Pinal County has about 60 of those people out of somewhere around 370 eligible properties, theoretically eligible properties. I say theoretically because, a lot of the stuff in Pinal County was listed a long time ago, and it may have gone through significant changes since then, which no longer makes it eligible. They may not even exist anymore, and there may be a different house there at that address, for example, or have had significant alterations to it. In theory, 1-story houses becoming 2-story houses, or the front facade changing significantly, things like that. Okay, so that's the basics of the program. I want to open up for questions because there's usually a lot of questions about it. But before we get to the questions, one of the first questions is always, if I join the program, can I replace my windows? And the answer is, well, yeah, probably, but would prefer that you not do that. But you probably can do that and still remain on the National Register and still remain in the tax program. The concept behind the tax program is not to freeze you in time and make everybody think that you're living in 1925 or whatever year. It's that you're preserving the qualities of the property that make it eligible for listing on the National Register. So you can do additions, you can do changes to your house within reason. And actually, we're usually fairly liberal with those reasons.
Excuse me,
Not really?
Eric, quick question.
Yeah.
So would this include new technology like solar panels?
Yeah, I personally really like solar panels because it shows investment in the neighborhood. People who are planning on, flipping the house aren't putting solar panels on. They're planning to stay there for the long term. So the city of Phoenix at one point was trying to limit the solar panels to only being on the side of the house that doesn't face the street, which really doesn't help people whose houses face the wrong direction because they kind of have to be faced toward where the sun is. We said that's silly. Solar panels don't harm the integrity of the house. In fact, like I said, they show investment in the neighborhood. So yeah, we're all in favor of solar panels, solar water heaters, things like that. So do we have questions at this point?
excuse us, we're going to pass the mic so
Okay.
everybody can hear.
If you want to be on the program and you submit an application and you're approved, and then you want to make some sort of renovations, who is the reviewing body?
Him and I, mainly him. He's an architect, I'm not. So yeah, you just send it to us, either email, through the regular mail, however is easiest. And we usually have we usually turn things around in a day or so, assuming we're here to do it.
So in addition to that application, the individual, like here in Florence, would need to apply to the town planning office as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so there'd be two levels, and we don't communicate with each other about that, so, we can, but that just usually doesn't come up. So, yeah, you'd be going through them and going through us as a separate process. But like I said, we're, in my experience, much faster than cities. I don't know about Florence in particular, but we do things faster.
Well, it's also true that sometimes we're more liberal than the city is, and so you can use our approval, nudge the...
Gilbert doesn't want to hear that. I'm
Well,
not sure if Laura wants
it's
to
true.
hear it either.
And as far as replacing windows, which Eric mentioned, everybody is now replacing their windows with double pane, which is fine. The only thing that we would require when you submit a request for approval of your window change is that they are the same configuration as the one that exists. And for the double pane, there's several levels of that. Some of them just have kind of snap-on buttons that don't really look, they're not really convincing, but there are some that have a spacer between the two sheets of glass so that it does look like the muntin goes all the way through. That's what we would prefer to see rather than the other ones. And now the window manufacturers have realized there's a large market out there for historic windows, and so they're very accommodating, and they will custom design the windows to match exactly what you have now. And in fact, there's such a market for it, and they make so many of the double hung windows in the configuration of the historic that you have to pay extra to get single pane.
Also, the least expensive alternative to replacing your windows is to get storm windows to put inside, there's some that are magnetic, so they just pop in and out, and they're supposedly as energy efficient and as noise reducing as replacing your windows with double pane. So that's an option to look into too. Windows are extremely expensive, and I kid you not, I once came across somebody who had spent $90,000 replacing all of their windows to save $900 a month. And he hadn't worked out the math yet to realize it was going to take him 100 years to recoup the cost of those windows. So yeah, we recommend paying attention to that. Plus, in a lot of historic homes, or actually a lot of homes in general, the energy loss goes through the roof, not through the windows. So like for a lot of federal grants, energy efficiency grants from the federal government, they won't even do windows on buildings anymore because there's it doesn't save enough money. They don't find it cost effective. Yes?
I'm just wondering if you have any lists of people who do work on historic homes. For example, our windows, we have some broken windows, and we need somebody that's a skilled glazer.
Well, as state employees, we're not allowed to recommend people, but I can tell you that the Arizona Preservation Foundation maintains a list on their website. That's azpreservation.org, and I forget what it's called, but it's right there on their front page, and it's obvious what it is.
We have copies of the list he's talking about in our office if anybody needs one.
Bonnie?
Thanks, Will. You mentioned that once you applied, you have to reapply every 15 years.
Yes.
How often do they have to send pictures to SHPO? Do they have to, during that 15 years, make some contact with SHPO other than when they're going to do construction?
Well, We used to do that on a yearly basis, and it became a tri-yearly basis. Now we're not doing it at all because all we were doing was kicking people out for not reporting. We weren't actually catching people who were doing anything wrong. It just became kind of the effect it was having did not seem to be following the intent that that rule was designed for, so we've cut monitoring for the time being. Also, I want to mention that when you apply for the program, it usually goes into effect the following year. If it's approved before August 1st, by statute, and we had nothing to do with this, it ended up there because of the Maricopa County Treasurer's Office. By statute, you have to have it approved by August 1st, or it goes into the following year. So, like for instance, if it was approved on August 2nd, 2016, you wouldn't get the reduced taxes till 2018, where if it was August 1st or any time from today on, it would be 2017 when that would go into effect. The Maricopa County Treasurer's Office was having to redo too many property valuation notices, so they sort of went out on their own and did us change the statute without alerting anybody. Yes. Oh, hi, Laura.
I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands when they first file for it, that has to come to my office
Yes.
first. And from there, I do what I need to do to it, and then I send it. You guys don't send it. I send it up to the Historic Preservation
Right.
Office.
And there's instructions on the back of the applications up there stating that. It goes to the assessor's office first, they do stuff to it, then to me, we approve or disapprove it, and then send a copy out to the owner and a copy to the assessor. Actually, the assessor gets the original copies here of that, and then they handle it from there. So Laura, you can come up and join us if you want to be up here and answer questions.
I'll just take them as they come.
Okay. Yes. Over there, the striped shirt.
I guess I'm just kind of confused. Is this more for a tax reclassification, like to lower property taxes for historic homes, or is this like what you showed up there with the Clark House, rebuilding or rehabbing the historic homes?
The non-income producing one is for historic homes. There's no rehabilitation in that required for it. It's just for maintaining historic homes. The commercial ones that we'll get to in a little bit are for rehabs, like the Clark House.
Okay.
Over here.
Hi, we own a historical property down here already, so how do you know when the 15 years is up?
We send you a letter letting you know.
Okay.
And hopefully if, well, actually this past time, Laura and I were coordinating, so if, say, I had the wrong address, I would eventually find that out and be able to get it to you, because, sometimes when you sell the house and somebody new moves in, theoretically they're supposed to alert us, but there's a lot of times no way the new owner knows that or whatever, and our database doesn't link to anything, so we end up having outdated information. But Laura doesn't. They do get the updated owner information, so before we get around to removing anybody, we make sure that we've got the correct owner information and stuff like that, or at least the same owner information that the county does. Back there? Will won't have to go to the gym tonight. He's getting plenty of exercise.
So where would we find this information? Is this on your website
Yes.
somewhere?
Yeah.
Just on the website, and it's not intuitively obvious. Where
No,
would you?
our website was designed some time ago and it hasn't been updated. It's on azstateparks.gov under State Historic Preservation Office, and there's a link at the bottom of that that goes to the state property tax program for non-income producing properties.
Thank you.
Hopefully, if I got all that right. We want to make it more obvious, but we haven't had a chance to do that yet. It's been a while since we've had a good web designer. Apparently the state doesn't pay enough to hire one that's good. I think that's a joke, by the way. I'm not positive.
For those that have a property and don't know if it's already on this program, isn't there a way to tell on your bill what rate
Yes.
you're on? And maybe Laura could explain that for them.
Every county is different, so I'll let Laura explain because I don't know about how obvious it is here.
Okay, so we're getting ready to send out the notice of valuations. The notices of valuation are going to show your legal class. If you're currently listed as legal class 03, you're not in the historical preservation. You have to be legal class 06, 07, or 08 to be one of the historical legal classes.
And
So when those notices of value come out, we are currently scheduled to have them out around around February 23rd, hopefully. But anyway, it's going to be within that week. Look at your notices of value. Pay attention to them. That's what's going to tell you. Also, we found some differences in properties, and we're removing some that had previously been in the historic preservation program, but were no longer qualified, or we could never find where there was even an application for them. How our office wound up with them in there, I don't know. But so some of these are going to be losing their classification, so you really need to look at that legal class on your notice of value to verify whether, if you were in the program, you're still in it.
Right. And 7 and 8 are for commercial properties, 6 is for non-income producing properties, and there's I think about a dozen properties that are in that situation that are being removed, if I recall correctly.
There's over 20.
Over 20, okay, so more like 2 dozen, I guess. So, yeah. Yes?
So my understanding is you can't change anything to the facade of the house, which would be the front side. Is that correct?
Kind of. You can do some changes, and it really depends on a house-to-house situation. Like if it's a brick house, you really don't want to stucco it, or unless it's been stuccoed since it was built, in which case that's fine if it's brick and stuccoed. But you don't want to change the siding that's originally there. You don't want to put an addition on the front. Little planters or things like that are fine. That doesn't affect anything. Awnings are fine. In fact, we prefer that if that's going to save you from replacing the windows. That's another option. Bob wants to talk.
I do?
I thought so. You were reaching.
Yeah,
for
I
the
do,
mic.
actually, because people are afraid that they can't touch anything, but that's not the case, and that's the reason why when you plan to do something and it does affect the front, the facade, we look at it this way, that the actual property that's affected by a change on an individual contributing property to the district is the district itself. So additions that are not really visible from the street, from the public place of the street, have very little effect on the integrity of the district. The most common change to what you can see from the street would be the enclosure of a carport. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That can be done without affecting those characteristics and features of the property that qualify it for listing. And that's why it takes the review, because it is, as Eric mentioned, an individual case-by-case situation. In some places you can actually put something on the front, but exactly what and how much depends on whether or not, after that's done, if the property still can convey the significance that makes it a part of that district. So it has to be reviewed.
Okay, well, part of the reason I'm asking is because I'd like to put a small perimeter wall around my property.
Yeah, well, that's
So is that considered the facade of the house?
usually your city ordinance will limit the height of a wall in the front of the building to 3 feet.
Right.
And the side walls it can be 6. And so usually that takes care of it, because the idea is if you can still see the building from the public street, if it isn't completely obscured, then it still contributes to the district, and that's fine.
So it doesn't need to go through your review?
Right, it can, just so we,
Should.
yeah, so we have a record of it, and so if anybody questions it in the future, they can say, yes, we approved it, or no, we didn't
Yeah, in
approve it.
case some neighbor comes to you and complains that you put a wall up, you can hang the letter, you can shake the letter that we sent to you in front of them.
Because they can't drive through my property anymore?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so basically, as long as it's 4 feet and under from our perspective or visible, or you can see the house from somewhere along the way, like a driveway opening, it's probably fine. And if it's not solid, then, you know, it's whatever the city allows.
Yeah, he was correct. Bob was correct. It's 3 in the front and 6 around the back, the sides. We do have guidelines, though, as you know, that kind of help you with those types of decisions when it comes to improvements to the outside.
I would just like to say that I, through the Florence Preservation Foundation, restored probably 10 to 15 historic properties in Florence, and SHPO was wonderful to work with during the process of all of those rehabilitations. So they're just great to help you out. Another thing is I Googled, once Gilbert told me y'all were having this tonight, I just Googled like state historic owner-occupied properties, tax credits, and immediately the website from State Parks came up. So it would just boom right there. And it has an extremely detailed explanation of everything you would want to know about this. The URLs are there for all the forms that you would need, and it's a very good website. So my Google found it just like that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie. Any more? Laura?
A residential home has been declassified. Can it ever become classified again and go through the program if they
Possibly.
tamed it and rehabbed it?
It kind of depends what's there. I mean, if they enclose their porch or the front patio or something and the bones of that are still underneath, then yeah, it's, or if they've built a large wall around it, and that's the reason for its declassification, then yeah, because it's no longer visible. There's but a lot of times the damage is too great, like it's just not what it was, and you end up with building a replica. If you go back, if you go through the effort of restoring it to what it looked like, it's more of a replica than an actual building. So it's a little strange that way. But, and also probably would be quite expensive to restore it back to what it was. So it's a case-by-case basis. We've certainly seen it happen, but we've certainly seen it not happen as well. There's cases, like we just reviewed one in Bisbee recently where the person had gone through great lengths to undo a lot of the changes that had been done to it, but in the end it still didn't look like the historic home that it used to be. It just looked, well, less crappy than it did with all their bad additions on it. So it was a nicer home, but it still wasn't historic.
Crappy is it?
That's a technical term, yes. Yeah. Another thing that will be counterintuitive, if you want to do an addition, we prefer it if you try to make it look like it was done this year instead of whatever year your house was built. If you've been to Tombstone recently, you can kind of see how that is, because Tombstone, they're real historic buildings. You can't tell because they've built so many fake things out there that look old. In fact, they put fake build dates on their newer buildings. There's one that looks like a Taco Bell that says 1881 on it that was probably built closer to 1981. And so that creates what's called a false sense of history, which is what we try to avoid. So as strange as it might sound, we want your additions to look like they were built today and not in 1925 or whenever. That's usually the toughest thing to get across to people, because it was certainly, when I started this job, that was the toughest thing to understand, was like, why would you want to do that? Wouldn't you? But then after visiting Tombstone and visiting places where historic properties got subsumed by additions that looked historic, I started to understand it.
And that was just last year.
That was just last year, yeah, after 10 years, yes.
Can I ask another question real quick?
Yes.
Since I have the mic. We had an instance in our historic district where we had a homeowner replace their windows, and the Historic Preservation Commission denied it because they didn't feel that the windows that were replaced with the grids, I think they were just like a vinyl sticky kind of stuff to make it mimic the grid look. It was denied, appealed to our city council. City council ultimately approved it because of a hardship that the homeowner showed a hardship. Would that homeowner be able to apply for the tax credit and possibly get it, just showing like the pictures and it possibly may look like the original windows, or do you also consult with the city as well on what other changes were done?
Well, it would be, well, first of all, it's unlikely we'd know that the city had done this unless they happened to put that in their application. You know, a lot of times, the way preservation was designed actually across the nation was it was to be weakest at the federal level and strongest at the local level, and we're in the middle there. So a lot of times the local ordinances are stricter than we are about things. So in this particular situation, where if all they've done over the years is changed out the windows and put in some kind of unattractive new ones, and yeah, they probably would still qualify for the program, because it doesn't sound like, just based on that we would be delisting them from the National Register. So I would think that, yeah, based solely on that, they could get into the tax program.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Back there.
Due to the amount of time that we have left, we'll have this as the last question, and we'll move on to the income-producing property.
Thank you. I'm on the Historic District Commission here in Florence, and I'm trying to make it easier for homeowners to work with both the town guidelines on our design reviews and you all. And I'm wondering, do you work together? So if a homeowner came to us because they have to have a design review, is there some way that you all could coordinate it so the homeowner doesn't have to do a two-step process and maybe getting different information from you than what the town is saying?
We don't, but we certainly can.
Yeah.
Because that's what I hear is one of the biggest, you know, a lot of people are afraid of the bureaucracy with an older home. So a lot of people just do it under the covers. And I think if we could do one thing is to let them know that mostly the town and you all are helpful. I'm a homeowner too, so I've gone through this process and I think it's very helpful, but I am concerned about a multi-step process, and you know, it's hard enough for a homeowner trying to restore their house without having to deal with a lot of unknown people in offices.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's no problem for us to coordinate more. I'm happy to, anytime City of Florence wants to talk to us about a project, we're happy to respond, whether they're in the program or not. If they're not in the program, we'd just be technical advisors and not having any real say over it, but we're happy to provide whatever technical support we can.
And in the past, the staff has called out to SHPO, and they've been real responsive in guiding us through the process. Want to go ahead and move on to the federal tax credits for income-producing properties, just so we're actually getting a lot of questions, which is what you want. So. We have to start our Historic District Advisory Commission meeting at 7, so let's move on to the next type of property, which is commercial properties. And we'll let you guys, Chip will take over.
There's two different programs, one at the state level that affects the state property taxes on rehabilitated buildings that are commercial properties, income-producing properties. And the way that works, it parallels the other program, which is the federal program, in that both the rehabilitation plans and applications are reviewed concurrently. So whatever is required to be submitted for the state property tax reclassification is the same thing that is required for the federal income tax credit. The federal income tax credit, the credit that you actually get is equal to 20% of the cost of the rehabilitation. So if you spend $100,000 rehabilitating income-producing property, you will get $20,000 in income tax credits. And in some projects, it becomes a source of funding if the owner doesn't really have the need to use that much tax credit. You can get a silent partner, and acting as the general partner, the investment that is brought by the silent partner will receive the income tax credits. And the other variation is that if you have a property that you're leasing, the leasehold can actually do the improvements and get the credits. So it's either the owner or the leasehold that really is eligible for the rehabilitation income tax credit. There's only one caveat that the the cost of the rehabilitation has to be equal to or greater than the book value for the property. In other words, what is on your books for the building minus the land, value of the land, minus the depreciation. So in most cases, if you do the books correctly, the value is in the land more than in the building. So that threshold is easily met in most cases. The review is done here in our office, but it's only advisory. The final decision is made in Washington and by the National Park Service in their Technical Preservation Services Division. Usually they will approve what we recommend, partly because we work together on it. And if we get the, if you have a property that you're considering to rehabilitate for a continued use or for a new use, the first thing you want to do is contact our office and arrange for a walkthrough, because we can come out, walk through the property. You can tell us what you're planning on doing, and we can tell you that's fine, it doesn't seem to be a problem, or perhaps you ought to consider doing something else if you expect to get the certification from Washington. So it's always good to come to us early in the project for that reason, that rather than get all the way through construction documents and then discover that you'll have to make some changes. So it's really a pretty good program. We have had considerable success with it in terms of the advantages it's brought to people for a source of equity. And so is there questions? I just covered it lightly.
Hi, I have a question. So when one is under renovation, it's under a different legal class than once it gets renovated? Is that correct?
Well, what happens is that the property is reclassified.
Once they enter into your 10-year program?
Okay, the property has to be listed. There's two different programs. At the state level, which you're talking about, and I forgot to mention what that entails, but I'll get to that in a second. But the property for the state program has to be already listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And it is reclassified when that is submitted for the property tax
incentive.
Yeah. And what happens there is that for a 10-year period, the property taxes are reduced from the usual 21, 22%.
18 now,
18.
it's 18%.
It's reduced from 18% of the assessed value to 1% for a period of 10 years.
On the improvements only, so the base value, the part that they haven't changed, remains in
Yeah,
flux, just as it normally does.
So in other words, when you invest in a historic property to do a rehabilitation, excuse me, you're not penalized by suddenly your property taxes go up. They don't go up, just a smidgen. The ordinary underlying, as Eric stated, still does rise and fall with the value of properties.
So we have to leave it at, once they start it in a renovation type of a process, we leave it at the renovation for 10 years?
Yeah, they'll be in legal
And the valuation cannot be increased.
Yeah, no, you
No,
can't.
it can.
It
The
does.
valuation
The
changes.
valuation, the basic valuation that you have is always flexible.
Because it says no increased taxes on appreciation due to building rehabilitation.
Well, yeah, for the increased value due to the rehabilitation. In other words, you put in $100,000 in the rehabilitation, then you come out and take a look at it and say, this property is now worth $1 million more.
See,
Or you say,
so,
That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
get at,
yeah,
is,
so it's just that increase due to the cost of the rehabilitation, not anything else. So there's two different things going on there.
okay,
And
let's,
that stays, the $100,000 part of the whatever.
well, what, the property I'm referring to is the Superior Hotel. Because we've got it listed like it's, now like it's in its current state. Do we have to back it off?
No, whatever you have at the moment is fine. It's just that when they complete the rehabilitation.
It's done.
It is?
I pretty close to it. We've
Well,
got
they
it
haven't
listed.
submitted-
We don't have it listed like it was.
Oh.
We
you don't
now
have a-
have it listed in its current state.
Oh.
So that's what I need to find out what we need to do. Maybe I need to call you guys after this.
let's do that. And by the way,
Yeah.
there's been a persistent myth that's long predates us,
Yeah.
that when the commercial property enters the tax program, the value freezes, and that's not correct. I don't know where that came from, but,
Well, it kind of,
no, it does say that up there, but, yeah, that was I don't think that came from our website, but I'm not sure. It did? Oh, crap, it's on there too. Okay.
The way I understand it is that the value continues to grow, but the improvement isn't added to the value.
Well,
That stays.
So if you have a $150,000 property, you put in $100,000 and make it a $400,000 property, you're still taxed at $150,000 and it goes up as taxes go up, or?
Yes, that base stays flexible.
You didn't get raised the tax to
But
$400,000
the
or even
increase-
$250,000, you left it at the $150,000 and then it goes up as normal taxes go.
Right.
Value goes up, but not increased because of your improvement.
Right, I mean, it increases at 1% taxes instead of 18% taxes, but that's it,
well,
for a
it's a
10-year period.
1%, it's a 1% assessment ratio, but that's still a totally different deal, because if the valuation is increasing,
Yeah, does
that,
that assess that 1% of the 150?
or 1% of the 400.
Or the 250
It's just-
after you put 100?
250.
It's the difference.
So you have
1% for the difference.
You don't increase the assessment to the what value you created in the property by rehabbing it. You take 150, put
Right.
$100,000 into it, it's worth 400.
Yeah.
You get taxed at the 250.
Okay, so it'd be two tax assessment ratios for that one. There'd be the 18% for the $150,000, and then the $250,000 would be taxed at 1%.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the 150 equity built in wouldn't be taxed at all.
That's more,
No, that's,
We're going to have an outside
yeah. See,
conversation.
this is,
Yeah.
back in 2008, the Department of Revenue and us came up with a historic property program guideline for both the state ones. About 2 pages of this let's see, what is it, 30-page book? 25-page booklet is on the non-income producing one. The rest of it is all trying to help the assessors understand what the legislature created 30 years ago. We have 7,000 properties in the non-income producing one and about 50 in the income producing one, so there's...
Is that on your website, or do I need
No,
to get off of DOR's
I don't even
website?
know, I'm not even sure if they have it anymore. I may have to scan this and send it to you, because I did discover recently that everybody at DOR who worked on this is gone, so
Yeah,
there's nobody
yeah.
there who understands how
There
this
is
was done.
the majority of the DOR people are gone.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll scan it and send it to you. Way back there. Yes.
I'm on the Historic Commission. My husband was on the town council. Nobody told us about it. We put $200,000 into a building here in town, and nobody told us there was any kind of tax incentive 3 years ago. And I think that's, that's a bummer.
Yeah, I agree it is.
Talk to Bonnie. What's that?
The tax incentive was there 3 years ago?
That's been there for decades, yes. Not, no, unfortunately not.
So you have to apply prior to starting the renovations?
Yes. I mean, it kind of comes down to the assessor to be able to figure out what work has been done when they go out to appraise the property, ideally before the project begins and then again afterwards to determine the changes. If there's a way to do that, I mean, after the work's been done, then that's fine by me.
I cannot emphasize enough the fact that everybody who has a historic property, before they do any construction on it, they need to contact SHPO. This is what, when I was working down here, we always did. People would call me, Bonnie, can you get Jim Garrison to come down and look at my building? And that was the first thing that, back when we had the Heritage Fund and we were restoring properties, have Jim Garrison at SHPO come down and look at the building. He can help you out. Services are free, or he or Bob Frankenberger. That's part of their job, and they would probably tell you about the income tax credit program, but as I said, I can't emphasize enough that they need to do that. And I would like to add one other thing is people always want to get the Governor's Heritage Preservation Honor Awards, and I understand that the first thing that's asked among the people is, was SHPO involved in this project? If the answer is no, it's like, well, did they follow the design, the design guidelines, or yes or no? So it's very important that SHPO be contacted.
It's real important that contact information and other vital information appear on the town's website, and that it's easy to find, and it makes it easy for people to learn what they need to know. Also, some handouts would be good to have. Again, same contact information, everything that people need to know that Bonnie was just talking about, who to contact through SHPO and so forth. And that's directed to the town staff. Thank you.
If I may, let's make sure we're clear that SHPO here is here to help with your historic preservation project, and so is the town. But we are two different entities. We work together, for the same cause. But when it comes to receiving tax credits or incentives, that's something that needs to start with SHPO first. Staff is always willing to help you find the contacts, anything you need. I mean, that's what we do here in Florence is promote historic preservation. So feel free to call us. We'll get a hold of Eric, Bob, Jim, and Bonnie's correct. This team here is more than willing to come out and review properties or help you with your situation. But what we find is there's just this disconnect that we need to help bridge that gap. We're here to help you, and we believe in historic preservation as much as you do. So don't, even if you feel it's a dumb question, call us anyways. We want to help. So we're getting close to the end. Do we have any more questions? We need to wrap up soon.
Gilbert, I know you want to wrap up, but one thing about it is people in the prison, we hesitate going and interrupting somebody if they're starting to work on their project. Like town staff is not going, unless it's a violation of a code, that's the only time they come and say, okay, you need to do this, or you need to contact us about that. If you're just doing something, nobody is going to say, oh, you got to go to SHPO, or you got to do this, unless it is a town code. Just like SHPO's not going to go out. If I go tell them, oh, so-and-so is working on their house, they're not going to go. They need to be invited. We don't want to feel like we're intruding on your personal property or your personal project. So all you have to do is ask.
Well, I didn't apply, and my building's done, so I guess I'm out of luck. But we own the building Pioneer Title downtown in the Historic District, and we built it real quick. And thanks to Gilbert and his staff, I think you did tell me about the ship, if I recall. But no offense, guys, but it takes a long time to get all those things done. We got our building up and done, and we're operating a successful business. We're thrilled to be part of the Historic District. It'd be nice to have some of these incentives, but to me, it doesn't offset the timing and how quick we got things done. Now, we're looking at some other historic buildings in downtown that we may do something with, and we may explore that and see. But for this particular one, and if you've driven by our Pioneer Title, it looks pretty nice, and the chop shop are really thrilled that we worked with the town and want to thank Gilbert and his staff. They did an excellent job for us.
Okay, first, how do we know we are on the historic district? And second thing, are we talking here about exterior or interior, or does it really matter?
Exterior. For the non-income producing ones, yeah, we're not really concerned about what goes on in the interior. For the commercial projects, particularly with the federal one, we are concerned about the interior because the National Park Service is concerned about it. So part of that is preserving the characteristics on the interior that make it worthy of preservation.
And usually the rehabilitation of a historic property that's for income producing, the rehabilitation usually is the interior to make it facilitate the new use. So yeah, it's not just exterior, it's interior as well.
And how would we know if we are on the historic district or not?
You give us a call.
Give us a call and we'll check it out.
Yeah, if you give staff a call, we'll be happy to answer your question as far as if you're on the historic district or not. Also keep in mind, staff is working on a link to a website that will provide all the information that we have at our fingertips for the public. And that includes historic district information, designations, all that. It'll be at your fingertips. Should be released, I believe, this summer. So, more questions?
Yes, I just want to clarify because I am on the commission, and one of the things that I have heard is there's a lot of concern about properties in the downtown, and they're owned by absentee property owners, and they're doing nothing with their properties, and it's just kind of a drag on the downtown and kills any incentive to invest in it. And these absentee owners and these properties are not on any kind of a program.
Not to my knowledge.
Either with the income tax or with the county taxing. They would not be on those programs.
For the commercial ones, it requires work to be done. So if they're not maintaining their properties, even if they were in it, they'd be receiving no benefit from it. But to my knowledge, the absentee owners are not in the program at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
One last question, because
I'm on the commission too, though, and really, if you're buying a property or renting it, the realtor is supposed to tell you you're in the district or not.
Yeah, if they know, which sometimes
yeah, with
they
all due
don't.
respect to them, if they know.
That's their
most of them
job to
don't.
know.
It is, I agree. We've made attempts to approach the real estate community in Phoenix and Tucson to educate them about it, and they really didn't show much interest, in part because the ones that do focus on selling historic properties don't want the competition from those who don't. So there was a sort of wasn't working in our favor, but that's how the reality was, so.
Staff we've had a couple meetings last year where we volunteered to go to small meetings, 10 people or less, and they were all realtors that work here in town or sell properties in town, and we did advise them of our applications, including our historic district process, and I thought it was quite successful. But yeah, staff is open to anything you might have. Come see us. We'd be happy to help you out as best we could. I want to thank our experts that came out tonight, Bob, Eric, Laura, thank you so much for taking time to share your information with the people here. I want to thank all of you, including Casa Grande, that came out for this session. Staff will be having we typically have a CLG training that we do for the commission. It'll be open to the public, and it's typically arranged around late summer, but it's required. We do that. We have that. We're going to have that on video as well, so people can watch it from home. I want to say, just in front of you is just our home tour that we're having this year. It's our 31st, and it's going to have over 20 properties that you'll get a chance to view and see. There's a few new ones on there, so we're real excited about this. We do it every year. It's a big one this year for us. So, anyways, thank you again for coming, and we're going to go ahead and conclude here and start setting up for our HSAC meeting that starts in a few minutes. Thank you.